Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's the creepiest town you've driven through on your road trips? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This one rural town in between Billings and Great Falls, Montana gave me super creepy "we hate outsiders" vibes when I stopped by the gas station. There's a lot of little towns in Kansas that are the same way. Wimamuka, Nevada wasn't so much creepy as just odd. San Francisco in the middle of the night was wild and horrifically sad at the same time. Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. There is a legend that says more dead people walk the streets than living, and holy crap, what a weird feeling everything is there. Literal time machine. I've been through plenty of creepy towns in New Mexico, heading to and from camp trips with family and scout troops in the past. Cuervo, New Mexico definitely tops my list. It's a ghost town that apparently has had murders in the past and is a ghost town. While going through there on my last trip, it was pitch black, like unnaturally dark. I couldn't see anything even with the people's headlights. Anytime I go through Cuervo, I wonder if any cults exist nearby. Wouldn't be hard to hide due to the nearby rough terrain. If you haven't, I think we could all benefit from traveling just to see other people's experiences and perspective. Not a town, but the Navajo reservation from past Gallup to just before Durango. A guy in the most broken down piece of shit car I've ever seen, still barely in motion, gave me 1,000-yard stare as I passed by him. He had his windows open for ventilation, and hard living had just left a mark on that man. It made me realize that even though I thought I'd seen rough poverty, I hadn't. I'm not saying that judgmentally, just got me thinking about the people who live there and what their lives must be like. Centralia, Pennsylvania. There's been a coal fire burning in the mines since the 60s. Town is all but deserted, with about 5 people left. When you drive through it, steam comes out of the ground, like when you visit Yellowstone. I actually read an urban fantasy book where a bunch of demons set up shop in the town because it was deserted and smells like hellfire. Another one, Steptoe, Nevada. So very much nothing on the 93 highway around it. Spent hours wondering how in the hell they had a Mormon church outpost and fancy new high school in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Finally got an answer. There's a silver mine nearby. It's probably the most isolated town or settlement I've come across outside of somewhere like Montana. I imagine that anyone who grows up there and doesn't like being LDS has a very hard time. Upper West Palm Beach before hitting Jupiter Island. I'm a native New Yorker, and I live in Florida for 4 years. I never not checked the door locks when driving through there. The deserted look and gates on the windows always gave me the heebies. Harper, Texas. Passed through there after a trip with my mom one summer, and it was like being in a horror movie. There was no one around. We didn't see a car or a truck for maybe an hour. Lots of buildings are old and falling apart, and you get a feeling like someone is watching you from most of them. We stopped at the one gas station in the town and walked in to use the restroom. The place only amplified the horror movie vibes. Old, gray, painted cinder block building where they sold all kinds of rough furs, hunks of meat of dubious origin, and almost nothing from the current century besides the drinks in an ancient refrigerator. The only person we saw was a giant bear of a man with a huge beard working the store. He didn't even speak to us and just watched us creepily as we ran to the restroom and back out. Never again. It took this many stories to get an Ohio reference, but don't worry, we've got one. Akron, Ohio. Yep. It was what most people, not me, would call a beautiful weekend day in the summer, yet there was barely any people or vehicles out on the street. I remember my friend and I joking that all the people must be at a cult meeting. This one town in Michigan, south of Ann Arbor. Stopped for gas, saw not one car moving the whole time we drove through the town, not one person anywhere. At the gas station, there was no cashier despite the pumps not being the kind you can pay on. The building was open, the lights on. I called for the cashier, no answer. Left the money on the counter and noped out of there. I was like the town had just emptied. Randsburg, California is something else. It's mostly a ramshackle ghost town. Mine closed long ago, with a few people still hanging around in old trailers and whatnot. Creepy as F at night. Eureka, California. Felt like I had entered the Twilight Zone. Hardly anyone around town or cars on the road, except meth heads doing weird shit. Everyone in town gave us weird looks too. We stayed the night in a hotel there. Someone tried to break into our hotel room. Cambria, California. It's a touristy town up Highway 1 on the way to Big Sur. It has a peculiar history, being so close to Hearst Castle and the crazy parties Hearst used to hold. Apparently, Cambrian started as a getaway for the upper Hollywood types, or so I've been told. I always get weird vibes going through there, like an old horror movie vibe, like The Howling or The Fog. Something is not right about that place. Sometimes you get the answers to the questions you wonder about. No contest. The I-89 from Grand Canyon to Flagstaff. The road was a mass of tiny dips and rises. The Santa Ana winds were bowing in the same direction we were traveling in. The combination made it feel as if 35 miles per hour was 10 miles per hour. All along, the roadsides were clusters of metal crosses with neon tape on the top 3 points. And the noise of the wind and the fact that it was night, we were petrified. We stopped at a petrol station. The door nearly ripped off when I opened it as the wind caught it. In the shop, I asked the deeply southern-sounding middle-aged shop assistant what the signs meant along the road. They're dead people. I was so effing relieved. Everything had been going through my mind. It was pure alien abduction, cult, kidnap, serial killer territory. Instead, it was remembrances to be careful, courtesy of those who weren't. I don't know what it's called, but one of those really small towns in Missouri as you head to Oklahoma. It's got like one warehouse that advertises the most basic stuff like chocolate and cheese on an electronic billboard. Other than that, there are so few buildings that it only takes maybe 2 minutes to drive through it. And I don't know about daytime, but at night, it looks straight up deserted, and it's great horror story material. Not really a town, but in between towns on Highway 96, in between Willow Creek, California and Happy Camp, California. I was working on a hotshot crew, a U.S. federal government forest firefighting job, a few years ago in the summertime, and a crewmate and I went to Redding, California, to the coaster near Arcata, California, to surf for the weekend. We were driving back on a Sunday night because we had stayed on the coast sort of late to have an evening surf session and maximize our time surfing because we were going back out on a fire for 2 weeks the next day. So we ended up driving back at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of nowhere California backcountry, alone on a highway in the pitch black darkness, and we hit a deer going 60 miles per hour, and he hit the passenger side window on the headlights range, so he hit the car door in the dark, so we never saw him, just saw the blood and scratches once we got back to our fire station. We never stopped. We knew it was deer, probably, because there is more. We saw more deer like 2 minutes later. It was kind of traumatic. Texas in general creeped me out. My dad and I were road tripping through. It was 10 p.m. and we came to this town in the middle of nowhere that was all hotels. Hiltons, Motel 6s, Best Westerns, every chain hotel was in this small, dead town, and every single one was fully booked. We frantically checked every one with no luck and finally had to leave. The highway out of town stretched out into the desert, into pitch black. A couple of trucks passed going the other way, and I swear to God, one swerved into our lane to try and scare us. An hour later, we reached another town and were able to book a hotel, but we were pretty shaken up. Turns out the oil companies put their employees up in hotels, but I'd never experienced something like that before.